One of the things that I did whenever I built this square body that brought great pride, like I like to tell people, was that I got the AC running well, it worked great, and then it stopped working. So I diagnosed it down to the high pressure switch on the back of the compressor. If I unplug it and jumper it, AC comes on, blows great. Excuse me. And so today we're going to address that, get it fixed, and then recharge the system, and we should have AC again. Now the process to this is super simple. This is the switch in question. It goes into the back of the compressor. It's got an O-ring seat that I'll have to replace, right? And then there's a snap ring that goes over the top and holds said switch in under pressure. I don't know what happened to the last one, but I do know while getting the AC running was one of my favorite things that I did for the LS swap. I just felt like it made it much more of a complete vehicle. It was also one of the more challenging things because I didn't put this switch in before I installed the AC compressor, which happened before the motor went in because it is very tight. So tight, in fact, that I actually trimmed the frame a little bit for it to fit in the factory position. So, with all that being said, this is gonna be a pain. There's probably gonna be a lot of cussing involved. But I'm gonna set y'all up and try and let y'all see kind of what I see and how hard it is to see it because you have, well, let me show you. So from up here you can see it's just a long ways from the truck, top of the truck, all the way down to reach to where the switch is. And if I put you down here where you can see what's going on, you can tell that the motor mount is directly behind it. The frame is to one side, the engine block is to the other side, and all you can do is reach up. You can get basically one hand in there at a time. And that's why it's such a pain. So I'm gonna go ahead and get set up. We'll be laying underneath the truck for a while, so I will kind of get set up and then we will film the attempt of taking this out. One of the other problems is there's no way to put a set of snap rings directly to the snap ring, so you have to have a set of 90s. I don't have a good set of 90s. I honestly don't even know where my snap rings are, so we will first we'll find those, get it all set up. If I can't find those, maybe we'll make a ride to Tyler. It's almost lunchtime anyway. Hit up the Hobo Freights, maybe get a set of icons with like a really nice 90-degree set of snap rings. The adjustable ones, or let me rephrase, not the adjustable as much as the multi-tip where you can change the tips out. They're okay, but they're bulky, right? So they have like a screw that holds the tip on, and they're sloppy. They have a lot more play in them, so they do make it more challenging. So if I can't find whatever one I used, which I think was in fact a adjustable tip style, we'll ride into town and get what we need. Crazy thing about tools, if you put them up where they go, they are actually still there whenever you come back for them. So this is the pair I had. I actually adjusted the end, I think, if I remember correctly, intentionally that way so I could get a slight angle to it, and it drew them together maybe a touch closer than if they were lined up evenly. But you can see how bulky it is, and they have a tendency to twist and turn, so hopefully this will go well. It also, this one has a reverse. If you flick it, there it is. So now you can open instead of close. Anyhow, it's a Titan brand, so maybe that's Harbor Freight. I don't remember exactly. Not a bad set of snap ring pliers. It's just they're not a premium custom made, you know, for the specific task set. They're made for any task, and that just doesn't translate well. This is what you see from underneath. So you have your cross member directly below, then your motor mount point, and as you can see, we actually trimmed the cross member, put a fresh plate on it, and then you can't tell it from here, but we also had to trim the frame to get this thing to fit evenly with the AC compressor in. So yeah, let's get started, see how it goes. So one of the things I found was you can use your phone sneak your phone in and use it like a snake, so we can see exactly where the snap rings are. So I went with the patented destroy the snap ring to get it out method. Worked pretty good. Now we're going to pull that O-ring. You can kind of see right there on the shoulder, it's black, and put that green one in, and then we'll stick the new one in. I'm gonna be honest, y'all are in the way. I definitely regret pulling the other O-ring. Probably would have been fine. Alright, so I got the green O-ring in. Wasn't terrible. Honestly thought it might be a little worse than it was. Alright, so I got the new one pressed in. All we gotta do is just set the snap ring in there nice and easy, and all will be well. Alright, we got the hard part taken care of. The high pressure switch is reinstalled. Make a quick connection on the high pressure switch as far as the electrical connection goes, and then it's time to start doing the AC recharging. So let's get at it. It's highly recommended to vacuum test your system before you charge it. One, because Freon's expensive, and two, well, you can rent these tools for basically free from any of your local hardware stores, hardware stores, any of your local parts stores. I got mine from O'Reilly, but AutoZone, Napa, I'm sure most of them do the same thing. Next, you'll need a set of gauges. Also got mine from O'Reilly's, but any of them will work. Alright, while this thing runs, I'm going to give you a little kind of rundown on what I do know about it. So you got a vacuum pump. I don't even know what it pulls. Right now it's holding somewhere in the ballpark of 6-ish bars. I think it'll go a little bit more than that. So that's 6 bars on the negative side, on the low side. And then we got our connection on the low side, connection on the high side, and you pull some vacuum, and then we're going to let it sit for an hour, make sure that the vacuum holds. We're going to let it run for a little while just to make sure it gets any extra moisture that got in the system when I bled it down out of there. When I say moisture, I mean water moisture, not any leftover Freon or oil that's in there. Alright, if this is your first time recharging an AC system, there's definitely some unusual tools used and principles that probably need to be followed. Like one, you put a vacuum on the system to make sure that there is no leaks but also to get rid of any hydrogen atoms, you know, water that are in the system. The vacuum makes hydrogen vaporized. So we're pulling about 9 bars, somewhere in there right now. It's probably been running for about 15 minutes. We'll keep letting that thing run for a little bit longer. Blue is your low side, red is your high side, and yellow is filler or vacuum line. So like this will be what you hook up. That'll be what you hook up to your can of Freon, this thing. And yeah, so we're gonna pull the vacuum down probably for another 10 minutes, and then once we get to that point, I'm gonna shut the pump off and let it just sit, make sure it doesn't leak, for another 30-ish minutes. That'll give it an hour of vacuum. And then after that, we will hook up the Freon bottles and start filling it up. Squarebody claim that they hold 60 ounces. I want to say the last time we filled it up, we put about 3 pounds in it, and it was too much and had to bleed off a little bit. So let's just say probably more like 2.5 pounds, which would be 50 ounces, something like that. So a little bit less than 60. So no, 16, 32, and 16 is 42, 48, yeah, 45. So a pretty good bit less than 60. All right, it's showing I don't know, right at 9-ish bars. Let's just call it 8-ish bars. And it is 3:05. We give it 30 minutes and then we'll come back and see what it looks like. Well, good morning. Yesterday went pretty much exactly how I said it would yesterday. Started out, seemed like it was going pretty good. I started charging the system, the AC got cool, compressor started kicking in, vice versa. And then I popped a fuse underneath the fuse panel, replaced the fuse. It ran for a short period of time after that. Boom, popped the fuse again, replaced the fuse, and now I don't have any power, or I'm sorry, now I don't have the compressor kicking in, so the clutch is not activating. I have already diagnosed all the way down to the high pressure switch, which is what went out last time. So I'm gonna check that today, see if it has continuity. Right now it should, because the pressure is not above whatever it's supposed to be at, 300 pounds or something, and it's does have pressure on it, so the low pressure switch is already feeding down to it. If that has power to it, then the compressor should be coming on, so then I might have to diagnose the compressor, or I'm sorry, the clutch itself. So let's get at it. Alright, so to add insult to injury, the low pressure switch is not communicating through, and then it dawned on me, I remembered the low pressure quick connect had a little hiss to it yesterday, and I couldn't get it to seal up, and at that point I was done. I was ready to burn the truck down, so I just walked out. So yeah, I would assume the low pressure switch is fine. It's just has no actual pressure on it. I'm gonna check the gauges to confirm, but I think that's gonna be the case. So it does have some pressure on it, but it's like low 31. I'm assuming that's below the switch point. So here's what it is. See what the high pressure side still has on it. High pressure showing somewhere in the 40s, and whenever I hooked that up, somehow or another, the low pressure side went up to about 38. All right, so I was told to diagnose a clutch. First things first is you just see if you can spin it by hand. So we're gonna try that first. Put y'all where maybe you can see. I don't know if you can see it spinning there, but it is spinning freely with no she's a little snug, but nothing spectacular. Alright, y'all definitely not be able to see this part, but I'm trying to get the connection off the bottom of the compressor, which I have successfully done. Now we can look at this wiring, see how it's going. Alright, step one, I think I'm just going to try for a check the ground. Do we have ground? It appears that we do not. That's not a good sign. There's ground. Okay, so we have ground here. Okay, there's ground there. I must not have had good contact. What, babe? We've already opened the door. Alright, so I double checked the ground. The ground looks good on both sides. So now I'm going to check the power. Alright, for this test, we're going to unplug low pressure switch. I got a little jumper that I built right here. I'll just unplug that in on both sides of the connector. Now at this point I should have power down to this joker. We'll just check to make sure that that is the case. Showing 11.69 for voltage. So we'll call that one good, and now I'm going to use this jumper to jump across this one. At which point I should be showing that same 11.69 down here on the green wire. So maybe this one. Or maybe this one. Okay, do we have 12 volts across this jumper? 1174. Check both sides. 1174. Okay, so that one's jumped across. Good. Now, alright, so I've been messing with this stuff and I could not get power down to the clutch. But if you wiggle this, hear it? So I think it's just this connector that's gone bad. So I'm gonna cut the wires off of it and see if I can go get another one. Alright, newest development on the AC system. I'm thinking my connector on my high pressure switch, maybe from me using the wrong thing to test for voltage with, is out of whack now, so it's not making good solid connection. So I'm gonna replace it with this one and we'll see how that goes. I've been all over the internet, so you know, much like WebMD, I now have cancer. Pretty sure is what's wrong with the AC system. I feel like there's a electrical connection issue, but I've also seen where if you have variable rate compressor, it'll cause problems as opposed to a fixed compressor. So I'm gonna try and fix this. If I can get the clutch to kick in, we're gonna see how that rides for a while and then go from there. Other than that, my first thought is I just punt and buy a Sandin compressor with the adapter from like Dirty Dingo or 10 other companies that build one to hang the AC compressor up higher. That seems like that would function pretty well. At least that way I'd be able to get to it if it did ever go out. First we'll try this, see if we can get the clutch to kick in, and then go from there. Alright, it's the following morning. The charge in the system went to shit. It started cycling, everything was working great. AC started blowing cold, and then it popped a fuse in the under the dash. Replaced the fuse, it popped again. Both times they were blistering hot, so something was drawing voltage. So then I had to mess with everything a whole bunch. I ended up replacing the high pressure switch connector, and that seemed to fix it. I also cut the ECM out of line, so it's running with the AC on right now with the ECM completely uninformed. Probably the reason why you hear it idle down a little bit, but this is what we got going. See the low side building up. When it gets up to about 50, the compressor kicks back on. Compressor's kicked on, and here the compressor kicks off. You see the high side dropping down to somewhere around 90-ish before the compressor kicks back on again. Builds up to about 130, 140, somewhere in there. It's a pretty cold morning. It's a pretty cold morning. I mean, it's well, I'll tell you what a gun looks like on it. Degrees Fahrenheit, 50 degrees on the hood. But if we come in here, showing 38-ish. So we do have a functioning AC again, but let's go over a couple of don'ts, the do's and don'ts. Okay, so one, I rented the kit from O'Reilly's. It worked fine, nothing wrong with that. One is when you back this out, it releases a little rod, closes a tube in there. The problem is when I pop this, oh nice, it was leaking yesterday. It doesn't seem to be leaking today, so that's great news. The low side leaked multiple times, so let's hope it's not leaking now. As you can hear, it is leaking. I'm gonna try and reseat that via a screwdriver. I don't think it's gonna work. I've already bought a replacement low pressure Schrader valve. So the lesson here is whenever you're opening up your Schrader valve via this twisty knob, all it's doing is pushing that Schrader valve in, and once it pushes it open, it's open. What I did was tighten it down, I assumed too tight, just making sure it was open. You know, you don't have to kill it. So I would say, especially if you already have pressure on the system, as soon as you see the pressure come into the gauge, give it a bump more, and that's good. That was one of the problems I had. One of the other problems, if you can see in the inside of this filler tube on the gauge set, there's nothing on this side. I put it on in reverse, so this side has a little, I assume some kind of Schrader valve or something. I put it on in reverse and I could not get flow at all. So this side with the little Schrader valve inside of it goes to the gauge face. This side goes to your bottle. Those two are probably the most obvious problems. If you're just recharging a system that's, or you know, you had to replace a clutch or a compressor, whatever it may be, you're using everything factory, everything worked as far as electrically before, I really don't think you'll have most of the problems I had. Most of them were, I think there's something going on when it's sending 12 volt to the ECM, causing it to have some issues. And then I think it's having problems with the, I think one of the biggest problem I had was that high pressure switch connector. I used it to troubleshoot using one of these actually, and it's a little bit wider than the actual pin that's on the, pin that's on the high pressure switch, and I think I bent it out and wallered it out a little bit, and so whenever I reconnected it, it was barely making contact which I assume made the continuity not very well. Not very, you know what I'm saying? And because of that, it was causing it to draw extra amperage because it had to fight over that very weak connection. And I think that was what was causing the amperage draw to make the dill pop. And then I think the first time it was simply that high pressure switch. Well, the high pressure switch was, it was capping out on the high pressure switch. The system was, I think I had too much pressure on, or too much Freon in it. And I don't believe the high pressure switch is there for capping. I think the high pressure switch is supposed to be there in case of, not a multiple time use. I think it's supposed to be above the low pressure switch. Pressure comes on, and as it fills up the high pressure side, when the pressure starts to come down on the low pressure side, it shuts off. And I think that's how it's supposed to cycle. I don't know that for a fact, but I do think that's about right. I think we're gonna call it quits on that one. We did get the AC functioning again. I don't think that we did it exactly right, so I wouldn't say this is like a how-to, maybe more so a how not to. Obviously learned a valuable lesson on the quick connects. Don't bear down on those things. Just snug them up whenever, as soon as it connects, as soon as it opens, it's open. You don't have to fight that. And then the line that goes to the filler, same thing. I realized that it needs to be the opposite direction. After I did that, I had no more problems. The vacuum pump, I think y'all got to watch all that. The vacuum pump worked well. You just hook it up to the yellow line, vacuum the system down. Once it gets down to, I want to say it was getting close to the negative 30 inch-pounds. Can y'all see that? Negative 30 inch-pounds. Most of what I've looked at before got to negative 30. I don't know if that's a gauge issue on here or a vacuum pump issue, but after it got to negative 30, it just stayed, right? So, well, I can tell you right now, if you look at it, everything bled off. It's riding just above zero, so I would assume I was actually getting to the negative 30. It just wasn't reading it because the zeros was slightly off. So that's where we're at with this. I wouldn't be afraid of it. I would be mindful, watch you a couple videos, and you know, do it as right as you possibly can. I think we're gonna get out of here on this one. Until next time. I just thought of National Geographic's thing way back in the whenever I was a kid, my granddad used to watch. It'd say, "Until next time, this is Wild America." But we'll see you next time. All right, bye.